What gifts have been brought to me? Once again, this vampiric relic is in the proper hands of LordeStarfox and, of course, the Midnight Society. Warning, the following video has flashing lights and also includes content that may be deemed inappropriate for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Still warm, just the way I like it. My creatures of the night, who dares awaken me from my slumber? Dr. Dennis Carroll from the Midnight Society science team is already sitting around the late night fire, waiting for us to join him as we again burn the timber into the early hours of the morning. There are contracts that need to be collected, and I grow tired of waiting. Dr. Carroll, are you ready to venture into the madness tonight?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, to the audience, as always, it's time to nerd out and get ready for some excellent knowledge as Dr. Carroll is about ready to take center stage. The microphone is yours, my friend.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Yes, my name is Dr. Dennis Carroll. I'm also called the Midnight Hunter, and I actually have a podcast called Hunting the Shadows. And we covered most everything having to do with the supernatural and the paranormal, definitely. And my career has stretched back almost, well, going close to 60 years now in investigating all these things and doing deep research, investigative research. And one of the most fascinating aspects of what I call the monsters, the creatures of the night, the things that may be out there. And believe me, I have seen and actually interacted with some of these things. And the most fascinating one of all to me, my favorite, is the werewolf. There's a lot of legends and stories concerning the werewolf. We've talked about that over the years. But now I want to look back with the history of the werewolf tonight a little bit more. The werewolf goes back thousands and thousands of years in human history and human folklore and culture worldwide in whatever form it may take. But these are basically shapeshifters, and that's what I like to call that. There's a big term that all this stuff goes under, the shapeshifter umbrella. And but where does the werewolf part of it begin? And that's another thing I've looked at. And you go back in ancient history to the story of King Lycan. Zeus, the god Zeus, actually showed up at his house, and of course, King Lycan was going to throw him a big dinner. King of the gods. And Lycan actually had run out of meat, the kind of meat that he wanted to go, and so was going out and getting his. And of course, a lot of people don't understand this nowadays because we could go to a supermarket and pick up something like that. You didn't do that back in the old days. You had to go out and pick out your goat or your sheep or whatever it is you were intending to. It was a long process. You don't just do that in a few minutes. It takes quite a while to prepare something like that. And unfortunately, he didn't have anything prepared at that time. But he did have one thing. He killed one of his servants. and he this poor fellow up and served him to Zeus, the king of the gods. And when Zeus, who being a smart guy, being the king of gods, he had to be that. I mean, he was real up on his stuff. When you're the king, you're supposed to know everything, okay? He was not fooled by this. He found out. He knew exactly what this was not animal meat that he was being served. That was a very taboo thing. You just do not eat your neighbor, okay? And but Lycan, who was evidently kind of a very devious fellow, and he just being himself, he was a king. He thought he could do whatever he wanted to and get away with it, and it didn't work out that way because Zeus knew what this was. So Zeus called Lycan and his sons into the room. He said, "What have you done to me? I am the king of the gods. I came here to, graciously to dine with you today, and this is a terrible thing you've done." And and he said, "For what you have done, King Lycan, I will curse you and your family. Because you have acted like ravening wolves, that's what I'm going to turn you into. I'm going to turn you into wolves," which instantly they became, and they ran out of the house and into the forest. And from that time onward, supposedly, would change into wolves sometimes. And this is just one of the old myths, one of the old legends that go back. And by the way, Lycan, his name Lycan, is where we get the term today for lycanthropy. Lycanthropy, Lycan. There you go. And that's the basis for that word and why it is such as it is. But this I find to be a very interesting myth because going further back into the very dawn of recorded history, you have these stories of werewolves and shapeshifters, people who turn into these things. And a lot of people think that this stuff is very prevalent in the Balkan regions, the Eastern European regions, such as in Hungary and Romania, Transylvania, um, Germany and Bavaria, and places like that, and even on up into Scandinavia, Norway, and so on. Of course, we all have heard about the berserkers and that also are in the Viking legends and the Uthendar. The Uthendar are the warriors who can turn into wolves. Throughout civilization's recorded history, there have been certain men and women who were given special abilities in order to be able to turn into these things, supposedly. The most interesting one of all is the that I find, and it's very interesting, is the one in Irish Celtic myth. This werewolf is known as the Fila. It is pronounced, I think, Fila or Fewa. They were a very distinct warriors. They were mercenaries. They hired themselves out to the different feudal lords of Ireland, the special ops team of the Celtics. When things were really going bad, you called on the Fila to help you out. They were looked upon not as terrible monsters, but they were looked upon as guardians. So they were what we call now wolf knights. They weren't like knights in army or the old fashioned medieval knights, but they were werewolf knights. Okay, wolf knights. Some people call them wolf walkers. That was another term they used. And back when Ireland had forests and wolves, wolves were venerated among the Irish to a great extent, and the Irish also really love their dogs, their wolfhounds and stuff like that. This was all canid type stuff that went on in the Celtic culture. The hounds of Ireland and all that were very greatly venerated by the different tribes and different clans and families of Ireland. So it's very fascinating to see how all this ties together in with that. But these wolf walkers, the Fila were a specialized brand of warriors, and they, if you were like a chieftain, you could call upon these guys to help you if maybe you were being attacked. Whatever the situation was, you could have the Fila come in. It's sort of the mop up cleanup crew. They would devour you as well, supposedly. Through many different cultures, you have this type of activity going on. In Africa, you have the leopard and lion men, warriors who supposedly can turn into leopards and lions. In the Aztec and Mayan cultures, you had jaguar warriors, the jaguar men, who could actually supposedly turn into jaguars. Um, this list goes on, just like I mentioned earlier about the berserkers and the Uthundar. You have these guys, the Fila, the Wolf Knights. And like I said, their main job was to help guard people. They kept the villages safe. So they were sort of like a werewolf police force to a certain extent as well. So I found this a very interesting aspect of Celtic culture. It's fascinating. Um, One of the things I was going to tell you about tonight is a little story connected with this. The myth of lycanthropy, humans turning into wolves, whether through curse or by personal choice and magic, have been in the world for thousands of years, as I said, ancient Greek mythology and so on. Early Christians used and believed the legends. Also, they spoke of wish spells and heathen magic that could turn men and women into wolves. And as Christianity grew, so did the myth of the werewolf, spreading throughout medieval Europe in the 11th to 17th centuries. Much of the mythology about half human creatures, such as the werewolf, were used as a metaphor. This is the way they looked at it in medieval times. This area was thought definitely of at the time of being filled with sinister magic and curses, and the Fila of Orser was said to pass into the forms of wolves whenever they wanted to. They could do it whenever so it wasn't, connected to the cycles of the moon. But it was mainly, something that you could perform or bring about by certain rituals and so on. Um, they said that when they did this, they went about some of the local cattle and sheep and stuff, and they would kind of turn a blind eye to that because this is the price we pay for having a Fila with us, on our side. So they wouldn't say too much about it if a cow or a sheep kind of turned up missing once in a while. And that kind of thing is going to definitely happen with wolves, whether they be werewolves or just regular wolves. That's the way that goes. And they say if you wounded one of these Fila, the wounds would be found on their human bodies later when they turn back to human, and that sometimes raw flesh could be found between their teeth when they came back into human form. Or Gerald of Wales, a 12th century priest and historian, wrote of an encounter with these Ossory wolf people in his topography of Ireland. He was a priest that traveled through the woods when a wolf came into his camp. And this wolf spoke to him, spoke to this priest, and said, "There's no reason you should fear me, where no fear is." And the priest was astonished at this and asked the wolf to explain who he was and how he had come to speak and behave like a man. "The people of Orsery are under a terrible curse," said the wolf. "Every 7 years, two of our number, a man and a woman, must leave our homes and human form and go through the world as wolves. Should we survive it, at the end of 7 years, we may return and become human again. And two more people from Orsery must go as wolves in our place." The wolf begged the priest to come with him, for his partner, the she-wolf, was sick and nearby. He wanted the priest to give this female companion her final blessing. The priest was afraid, but he followed the wolf through the forest to a tree not far from where he was camping. There in the hollow was a she-wolf in terrible pain. She gave thanks to God and allowed the priest to perform the last rites upon her. However, when it came time for the priest to give her communion, he hesitated. He was not sure if it was right to give communion to an animal, however human she may be or may seem. Seeing the priest worry, the male wolf went up to his partner, and using his claw for a hand, he tore off her wolf skin, folding it back from head down, and there in the middle of the skins was an old and woman, and the priest gladly gave communion to her. This sympathetic view towards werewolves that are merely victims of a curse But this was part of what the Fila were considered to be. Like I said, they were almost like a separate tribe of people that can do this. But another, going into the description of these things, they look more like regular wolves to a certain extent. These things could walk around on two legs when they wanted to, but most of the time, while running through the forest or hunting or whatever, doing they were more like normal wolves to a certain extent. They ran on all fours. Now you might remember me telling you about that time that it happened, that incident that happened with me in the mountains of North Carolina, where we were trailing a thing that uh, the track line that we got was showed this thing walking on four legs, and on further down the line as it got closer to another area, it went up to two legs. As far as I know, normal wolves and dogs and canid type creatures do not do that. Normal, that is. This was, I think, anything other than normal in that respect. But it is said, that people could do the rituals, could put on the magic belts, could put on the wolf pelts, and become these things. Um, we have always thought of werewolves as being mainly German and Norse legends, but that's really, that's what kind of surprised me when I found out about this, that the Irish had so many stories that feature them. And there was a time in Ireland, like I said, when there were more forests and wolves. There are no more wolves in Ireland, but I have to wonder: are they still families that hold certain secrets in Ireland? That at certain times, certain people that live there, or maybe their descendants who live elsewhere in other countries, may have the ability and the power to transform into wolves once more, just like the Fila of Ireland. I have to wonder about that. Is this not something that runs deep in the bloodlines of certain nationalities? You never know. But there have been many stories told of even the Fila being seen in America at a certain extent. So, and we do know that a lot of people from Ireland migrated here. So you got to wonder, the Fila still are with us. We've talked about that before on other programs and stuff. There are certain family curses, definitely. I've been contacted by several people over the years who say that they are actually cursed by the werewolf curse. That it is a curse that runs through their bloodline and their families. I even talked to one individual who had told me that he was well over 200 years old and that he existed as a werewolf through those years and to this day still does. And supposedly he was very Irish, I think, at the beginning. That's exactly, I think, was supposedly he was born in Ireland, but he had migrated to this country like over somewhat 100 years or so ago. And but he still had this supposed ability. And like I said, Hollywood has told us that the werewolf is tied to the phases and workings of the moon. This is not really true. Even folklore does not back this up. Although we have to remember the werewolf is a creature of the night, and all creatures of the night are attracted and attached in a mystical, supernatural way to the moon, because that is the light of the night. That is the queen of the night. And they are definitely attached to it, and they seem to, and I've studied and having studied a lot of folklore and stuff, that the moon has that ability to seem to give them more power. And I think that's the only attachment. If you're a true werewolf, unless there's some kind of a curse thing going on other than that, the true werewolf can turn into a werewolf in the middle of the day in Times Square, New York, if he wanted to. What I would not, but being a smart werewolf, he would not do something like that because then that would, give him away, and definitely that would cause his demise. The only reason why he's over 200 years old is he played it smart. He's always been very smart. He was never what you might say a loose cannon in the werewolf. And he said that there were many people out there, many families that also bore this curse. What has helped out with research a lot over the years. We had to go back in the day. I had to go to many libraries just to find a lot of information like this. You had to do very intense research. I'm used to that. A lot of people do not do it that way anymore, thanks to computers. because with computers, you have the libraries of the world at your fingertips. So you have a great resource there. And so now that when the computer age dawned, that really supercharged my ability to investigate and research these things to a great degree, and it has recovered more research for me than anything else in that respect. And what the big thing about all this is, and I will tell this to people who are going to be future investigative researchers in these kind of things, go back to the historical documents. You've got to go back to the beginning. You can't just, pick a place and say, I'm going to start here and all that. That's not how you do true research. You must always go back to the beginning of whatever it is you're looking at. Find its origin, find its true history. How did it start? Why did it start? When did it start? And is it still going on? And that's the interesting thing about the werewolf thing, angle of that, the shapeshifter. It is a still ongoing thing. It's not something in ancient past. It is with us to this day in many aspects. And my having lived here in the, very close to the Appalachian Mountains, and we have the Appalachian witchcraft and witches there that supposedly can transform themselves into different types of animals, not just wolves, but bears, jaguars, cats, whatever they decide to do. I've even heard tales of witches being able to turn themselves into spiders. And sometimes these spiders will be just normal looking, or sometimes they may be spiders of unusual size. I have one story where a supposed Appalachian witch could turn into a spider that was the size of a small cow. That's a big spider. You would not want to run into something like that. So not only, you got to remember something about shapeshifting. Not only are they changing the shape, but they can also change the size. And this goes back even to the ancient stories of trolls, whether they be woodland trolls or mountain trolls or just your regular standard troll. They could not only be susceptible to things like sunlight destroying them and all that, but they also could change their sizes sometimes when they wanted to. So they were, in a way, kind of like shapeshifters. There's even the story of a troll that could make itself look like a goat that would wait under a bridge for people to come by. And they would think, hey, there's a free goat, or somebody's goat's loose, I'm going to go catch you. And he would lure them under the bridge and eat them. That's interesting to think about. And the shape shifting ability, which I've done a ton of research on, runs very deep and dark into witchcraft and demonic power that people supposedly assume is involved in all this stuff. It goes deep into it, and it's used not only by creatures of the night, as we call them, monsters, or whatever name you want to give these creatures, cryptids, whatever. And the terminology has been changing over the years, definitely. But whatever you want to call these things, they have that ability. They have that to a certain extent. Most of them do. And that's what makes them so very dangerous. You're not just squaring up against a 10 or 12-foot bear, which is a natural animal that you run into. That's bad enough. But what if you square up against a troll that can, turn yourself into something that's 15 or 20 feet tall? You got a big problem on your hands, definitely.
Indeed, you do, my friend. Indeed, you do. Excellent stuff as always. Yet, as we are starting to tie this up with projects coming up here in the future, what are you going to be working on, my friend?
Well, as I mentioned, trolls and some of this other stuff, I'm looking deep into some of the Scandinavian aspects of some of this Norway, Scandinavia, plus the whole northern region up in there. There's some fascinating stuff up there, and that fascinates me. As a matter of fact, I was telling somebody the other day, a good friend of mine, that they're part of the legend of the trolls, or anything supposedly that's very much like that, is that you cannot actually believe in God and be a troll hunter because they can smell Christian blood, supposedly. That's an interesting aspect. Trolls can be very big, so you still got different types of giants that you're dealing with here, not just trolls, but just regular giants. But a lot of these things could change the size, so that's a fascinating aspect of it too. So shapeshifting cover is a big umbrella. But my favorite quote by Herbert Spencer is, every myth and legend known to mankind is not without its authentic foundation. And that's one more aspect of research I want to, leave with everybody tonight. Um, all research, all of this began somewhere with something that truly happened or truly was a real incident. It is based on truth. You just the main aspect and the main focus of research is to find that kernel of truth that you're looking for. That's the main thing that you want to find. That's the goal. And once you find the truth, you can back away from that and see what connects, all the connections that go to it. And I told someone not long ago, over the years when I first started my career many years ago, I discovered that all these many different fields and aspects, whether it be UFOlogy, cryptozoology, spiritual research, whatever it may be, all of this is strangely connected. And I had somebody ask me that not long ago, what is the connection? And I will give you the answer. We are the connection. We are the definite connections for it all. And that's one thing we've got to always keep in mind when we're doing our research. How does it connect to us? And where is our connection involved in all of this too? So that's the interesting aspect of this too, definitely. But I would tell everyone that now is a golden era of research, especially of investigative research. Research can be termed as just opening a book and reading a few pages about something and that's it. But in true investigative research means you got to take the deep dive into what it is you're looking into. You got to look at the historical records. You got to look at the experiences that people have had, the eyewitness accounts, and so on and on and on. You've got to dig deep. You can't just do it superficially and really truly ever grasp the subject that is at hand.
Absolutely epic stuff as always. To the audience, yes, if you did enjoy tonight's episode, please like, comment, subscribe if you have not yet. Head on over to Mr. Carroll's page as well. You can also find Dr. Carroll under the good old Midnight Society channel suggestion down below, or you can even get adventurous and search his name in the good old Google/YouTube bar and find what he has been up to. I do understand no one enjoys ads, yet these ads are strategically put there by content creators in regards of really helping out our channel. Yes, if you do enjoy any content creator, big, small, medium, doesn't matter. Those ads really do help out that channel with the good old algorithm. Thanks for hanging out tonight, Dr. Carroll. Totally appreciate you, man.
It's always my pleasure, my friend. And I invite everyone over to Hunting the Shadows YouTube podcast channel and agency. You can find on YouTube, and also my books are available on Barnes and Noble and Amazon. Just look up the author Dennis W. Carroll, or you can email me at denniswcarroll@gmail.com.
The fear in your eyes, exquisite. What gifts have been brought to me? Once again, this vampiric relic is in the proper hands of LordeStarfox and, of course, the Midnight Society.